The majority of men don't build lives. They inherit them, with some being more fortunate than others. They wake up inside structures they didn't choose, rooms already furnished, paths already cleared by other people's decisions. They step into routines that existed before they arrived. They adopt rhythms that were already running. They learn to call the default line because it is all that they have ever seen. Jobs they drifted into. Relationships shaped by fear of being alone. Beliefs absorbed through repetition, not examination. This is not because they are incapable, not because they lack intelligence. This is because inheritance is quiet. It doesn't feel like surrender. It doesn't arrive as crisis. It arrives as normality. You wake up, you respond, you perform, you repeat. And because nothing has collapsed, you assume nothing needs to be questioned. This is how a man disappears without leaving. He does not vanish in one big moment. He dissolves in small agreements. He becomes a reliable function inside a life he himself never actually authored. They call this a normal life, but it isn't neutral. It's reactive. Every unchosen structure exerts pressure. Every default rhythm trains obedience. Every unexamined belief narrows the field of possibility without being noticed. Even your preferences become inherited. Even your personality becomes shaped by accommodation. Even your direction becomes a response to what the world rewarded. A man who does not build reality is quietly built by it. Not violently or suddenly, incrementally, until one day he realizes he is defending a life he never consciously chose or entered into. Reaction feels busy. Creation feels slow. Reaction fills the day. Creation stretches time. Reaction looks like responsibility. Creation looks like restraint. Reaction keeps you moving. Creation asks you to stop long enough to decide. Reaction is like responding to urgency, living inside notifications, letting moods dictate action, letting circumstances decide identity. Reaction produces motion without direction. It feels necessary. It feels mature and adult. It feels unavoidable because reaction comes with permission. No one questions a man who is handling things. No one interrupts a man who is just busy. He can hide inside movement and call it duty. Creation is acting from direction, choosing standards before pressure arrives. Designing days, not just surviving them. Shaping the environment to support integrity. Creation does not shout its importance. It does not reward immediately. It does not generate applause. Creation often looks unimpressive. It looks like saying no and then staying quiet. It looks like choosing a standard and letting discomfort rise without negotiating it. This is why most men mistake exhaustion for virtue. They are tired, so they assume they are responsible. They are busy, so they assume they are building something of value. But reaction only sustains what already exists. Creation interrupts that loop of inheritance. One creates men with agency. The other produces exhaustion disguised as duty. And the body always knows the difference. A man can talk about direction and still live inside of reaction. A man can speak about integrity and still organize his day around relief. The proof is not what he believes with his mind. The proof is what he repeats. The proof is what he protects when pressure arrives. Because reaction makes you restless. Creation makes you steady. Reaction makes you sharp and irritable. Creation makes you clear. Reaction leaves you needing relief. Creation leaves you able to stand in silence and peace. This is not something new. Every culture knew this phase, not as metaphor, as inevitability. After initiation, after descent, after responsibility, the man must build, not philosophize, not heal endlessly, not wait for clarity. Build territory, build structure, build order, build meaning. This is where many men stall. They mistake insight for authority. They mistake experience for readiness. They mistake suffering for legitimacy. But insight without structure collapses. Experience without order becomes more chaos. Suffering without construction turns corrosive. The king is not crowned for his insight. He is crowned for construction. For what he can hold, what he can bear, for what he can stabilize, for what remains standing when he is no longer present. This is why the myth always turns outward here. No longer towards transcendence, but towards the earth. Because this stage is not about being interesting. It is about holding weight, being load-bearing. Not about what you have seen, about what you can carry. No longer about the story of what happened to you, about what you can build from it without turning it into theater. Building exposes truth. You can no longer hide behind the trauma stories, spiritual language, your potential, your intentions. Reality does not respond to explanations. Reality responds to what stands. What you build reveals what you actually value, what you actually fear, what you actually commit to. It reveals whether your inner work translated into form or remained a private consolation. That level of honesty terrifies most men. Because building removes ambiguity. You either place something in the real world or you did not. You either kept your word in the quiet or you did not. You either organize your life around truth or you did not. There's no refuge here. There's no getting away, no narrative shield, no symbolic escape, only proven structure. And structure does not lie. Nothing in your life is neutral. Your body, your schedule, your finances, your relationships, your inner dialogue, all of it is being built, either consciously or unconsciously. If you don't design it, habit will, comfort will, fear will. And they are terrible architects. They optimize for relief. They reinforce the familiar patterns. They reproduce the past with better language. They build a life that feels safe and then slowly suffocates you. This is why men feel trapped inside lives they technically chose. But the choice was never conscious. It was accumulated, inherited. And accumulation without authorship is not freedom. It is drifting with momentum. A man can be successful and still be built by reaction. A man can be admired and still be inherited. A man can look stable and still be unchosen. There are 3 core domains. They are not optional. They are load-bearing. Ignore one and the others deform to compensate. The first one is internal structure. These are beliefs, standards, vows. What you refuse, what you honor. This is not mindset. This is structure. Internal architecture determines what pressure bends and what breaks. A man who does not have internal structure borrows conviction from circumstance. He becomes consistent only when things are easy. He becomes principled only when he is supported. And under pressure, he moves. The second pillar is daily structure. Time and rituals and work ethic. Your days reveal your allegiances, not your words, not your ideas, your days. Disorder here leaks everywhere and shows, because men do not fail from weakness. They fail from days that contradict their truth. They fail from schedules built for distraction. They fail from rhythms that train drift. They fail from mornings that start reactive and never recover. The third pillar or core is external environment. Who has access to you? What drains you? What supports your direction? Environment is not background. It is instruction. Men fail not because they are broken, but because they live inside of environments that reward the wrong parts of themselves. An unbuilt environment turns integrity into a fight. A built environment turns integrity into a default position. A man who builds reality does not control people. He controls conditions. He does not convince. He does not posture. He does not demand alignment. He shapes the ground so truth can stand without defense. And he creates the calm where others panic, the order where others react, the direction where others drift. Not by force, by consistency. This is why unstable systems push against him. Because when a man stops reacting, he stops feeding the chaos that once made him useful. His stillness becomes confrontational without him saying a word. He is not threatening. He is not aggressive. He is simply no longer movable. After a man begins to build reality, there is a long stretch where nothing acknowledges it. No praise comes. No confirmation arrives. There is no visible return. And this is the place where most men abandon this work. Because building without witnesses feels indistinguishable from futility. The old life had feedback loops, drama, urgency, intensity, whereas construction has none of that. Days repeat. Effort feels unremarkable. Progress does not announce itself. This is not failure. This is the initiation through obscurity. In older paths, this was expected. The man returned from descent and was given stone, wood, earth, not recognition. He was told without words, build something that does not need to be seen to be real. Most men cannot endure silence without collapse. They interpret quiet as rejection. They interpret neutrality as erasure. So they return to the noise. They look for a reaction to prove they are alive. They look for a crisis to prove they are needed and necessary. They look for intensity to confirm their identity. But a man who stays begins to feel something rare. Integrity without audience. Authority without approval. This is where sovereignty actually forms, where the work becomes internal, where the standard becomes private, where the spine stops depending on reaction and response. This phase is dangerous, not because it hurts, but because the old life remembers you as you once were. Chaos knows your name. It offers intensity, significance, meaning through instability. So weak men sabotage. They provoke conflict. They destabilize routines. They abandon order. Not because they want to fail, because familiarity still pulls at them. The old patterns offer instant sensation. The new life offers quiet responsibility. But if the man stays, if he continues to build without stimulation, the body learns something new. Stability is not death, and this reorders everything. Not overnight, not in a big explosive moment, gradually. The nervous system stops hunting for disorder. The the mind stops looking for exits. The day stops needing to be escaped, and eventually something shifts. Not as reward, not as triumph, as resistance easing, decisions simplifying, energy stops leaking, friction reduces, people respond differently, not warmer, clearer. Life does not celebrate construction. It accommodates it. Order spreads through gravity, not through posturing or persuasion. It is not mystical. It is not symbolic. It is practical. The same choices repeated begin to remove the frictions. The same boundaries held begin to change what reaches you. The same structures honored begins to make your life simpler. Nothing arrives, but the noise reduces, and the reduction is the proof. The built man does not persuade the world to respect him. He becomes someone the world stops trying to move. Building reality costs. It costs you your popularity, your convenience, old identities, familiar chaos. You lose people who preferred you when you were reactive. You lose the roles that depended on your confusion. You lose the ability to blame the world for your drift. You lose the excuses that once protected you. You lose the little stories that made compromise feel justified. And you feel that loss in the body. Dull emptiness, where old chaos used to live and thrive. A quiet ache where intensity used to sit and reign sovereign. You use the places where you were tolerated only because you stayed easy to manage. But the cost of not building is so much higher. It costs your quiet resentment, chronic exhaustion, loss of self-respect, a life that never feels like yours. One cost is sharp, the other rots you slowly. The man who builds reality is not lucky. He is deliberate. He does not wait for permission. He does not wait for confidence. He does not wait for certainty. He builds while unseen, still returning from the underworld. He builds while unrecognized. He builds while tempted to return to noise and chaos. And over time, life reorganizes itself around what he has placed. Not because he demanded it, but because something real now exists. This is not ambition. This is sovereignty expressed through form. There is a silence that comes after a man has placed enough order in his life. Not the silence of collapse. Not the silence of eerie despair. A different silence. The noise drops away because there is nothing left to argue with. The man wakes up and there is no urgency pulling him forward. No crisis or drama demanding his attention. No chaos asking to be managed. This is where many men become uneasy because for the first time, nothing is distracting them from themselves. They are alone with what they have built. And what they have built either holds or it doesn't. This silence is not peaceful at first. It exposes all of the remaining fractures and tender spots, the small inconsistencies, the habits that survived out of convenience, the compromises that were never fully examined. This is not failure. This is refinement. A man who reaches this phase does not rush to fill that silence. He does not invent new battles. He does not seek stimulation. He listens and notices the urge to be seen, the urge to be recognized, the urge to make the silence mean something. And he does not reach for more drama. He does not reach for explanation. He lets the quiet expose him and everything that needs to be exposed. And he notices what still negotiates, what still flinches, what still searches for relief. Because silence only becomes unbearable when something inside of you is still lying. At this stage, identity loses its performance layer. The man is no longer the wounded one, the seeker, the rebel, the fixer, the misunderstood one. Those identities were definitely useful once. They carried him through earlier thresholds and initiations. But they cannot survive construction because construction demands consistency. And consistency dissolves theatrics and drama. This is why some men feel grief here. They miss who they were when everything was intense. They miss the meaning that came from struggle. But struggle was never the meaning. It was the passage. A man who tries to preserve struggle after construction will naturally, eventually destroy what he has built. So he lets those identities die quietly. No ceremony, no announcement, just absence. And in that absence, something simpler remains. Not a new mask, a stance, a sacred backbone, a sacred center. Once a man has built something solid, life does not stop testing him. The tests simply change. They are no longer asking, can you survive? They are now asking, is this real? Pressure arrives again. Loss, fatigue, misunderstanding, delays. The kind of delays that tempt a man to abandon standards for speed. The kind of delays that make compromise look like being mature and realistic. But the question underneath is different. Will you abandon your structure to relieve the discomfort? Will you trade integrity for speed? Will you re-enter reaction when things slow down? A man who has built reality does not pass these tests perfectly. He notices drift sooner. He corrects earlier. He does not dramatize the correction. Integrity becomes reflex. Not because he is above weakness, because he has built a life that makes drift visible. Because he has placed standards that expose compromise immediately. Many men believe they are standing when they are only enduring. Endurance is tension, clenched jaw, held breath, suppressed emotion. Endurance resists reality. Standing cooperates with reality without surrendering integrity. The enduring man is always tired. The standing man may well feel pressure, but the difference is he is not brittle. Endurance eventually snaps. Standing does not. Standing is relaxed awareness, load bearing without rigidity. This distinction is important because endurance looks strong until it fails. Standing lasts. Standing is not a performance. It is placement inside of the body. At this stage, authority becomes quiet. The man does not assert it. He does not explain himself excessively. He does not defend his choices. His yes means yes. His no means no. His presence does not fluctuate with approval. People feel this, not as dominance, as safety. Children trust men like this. Communities stabilize around men like this. Not perfect men, not healed men, men who do not flee themselves. This is authority without performance. It cannot be faked because it was made from repetition, from habit, from quiet decisions, from days that align. This is not arrival. Nothing much changes externally. The world does not crown you. This is placement. You are placed where you can hold. Placed with responsibility that does not overwhelm you. Placed inside a life that no longer requires escape. The shaking does not disappear. It simply stops entering you. Events move around you instead of through you. This is how you know the work has taken root, because the man remains. The man who builds reality does not conquer the world. He stops being owned by it. He carries his life without collapse. He remains present without performance. He stands when everything around him shakes. Not because he is extraordinary, but because he stayed when leaving would have been so much easier. This is not ambition. This is not success. This is sovereignty expressed through form. He does not need the world to agree. He does not need life to feel easy. He does not need constant confirmation. He simply keeps placing reality where fantasy used to sit. Men who build reality do not arrive by accident. They arrive because they paid the cost and did not ask for it back.